Have you ever thought of buying a franchise or currently own one or many? If so, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria, the podcast created and hosted by franchise attorney Josh Brown for the sole purpose of helping people find success through franchising.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Franchise Euphoria, the podcast that provides strategy, education, and helpful information for the franchise and small business community. Today I am thrilled to have John Jantsch on the show. John is a marketing consultant, speaker, and best-selling author of Duct Tape Marketing, The Commitment Engine, and The Referral Engine. He is the creator of the Duct Tape Marketing System and Duct Tape Marketing Consulting Network that trains and licenses small business marketing consultants around the world. His blog was chosen as a Forbes favorite for marketing and small business, and his podcast, a top 10 marketing show on iTunes, was called a must-listen by Fast Company magazine. In his new book that is yet to come out, titled Duct Tape Selling, John teaches anyone who needs to sell for a living how to think like a marketer and sell like a superstar. Hello, John, and welcome to the show.
I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, before we dive in, I just like to tell you, as I did off the air, what an honor it is to have you on the show. I've been listening to your podcast for quite some time now, following your blog, and really what I love so much above anything else is just your practical and down-to-earth style. I think there's a lot of marketers out there. There's a lot of marketing schemes out there, and you just really do it in a very authentic, real, and proven way, and I think that really resonates with a lot of people.
Well, thank you. And first off, I'm honored that you're giving me access to your community. That means a lot to me, and so I do appreciate that. In reference to the idea about practical, I think one of the things I really, and sometimes this comes out, hopefully it does, I really enjoy this stuff. I really enjoy, figuring out marketing. I have insatiable curiosity. And so a lot of what I end up writing about is, I am my target market. I am a small business. I am somebody trying to market my business and sell my wares. And so a lot of what I end up writing about is stuff that I just do and experiment with and find that works for me. And I think that probably, as much as anything else, I mean, unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there writing about stuff that they think would be a good idea, but they've never actually done or tried. And I think for me, that just sort of naturally keeps it pretty real.
Well, I mean, when your target market is yourself, I mean, it's pretty natural to say to go back to that, right, every time and say, okay, what is it that my audience needs or wants or is looking for? And you look at yourself. What am I looking for?
Yeah, I think there are some definite benefits, and I've written about that before. I think that it really gives you a leg up in terms of staying true to who you are and whatnot. But there's also the capability of it, keeping blinders up too, how you are and how you think and how you try to address the market may or may not actually be what the market needs. And so I think it's also equally important to branch out and look at other models and look at what other people are doing as well.
No, I think that's a great point. And obviously in the franchise community and the small business community, marketing is everything. It's huge, and we're going to dive into all that, and I look forward to doing that. But I'd love for you to just take a couple minutes to tell people who may not be as familiar with you. Tell us about duct tape marketing. I know you've been in this a long time.
Yeah, well, I've actually owned my own small business for over 25 years. And I really started as what I had seen as a traditional marketing consulting firm, which meant I was going to go out and tell people I do marketing and they're going to tell me what they needed. And I was going to go back and figure out how to give it to them. And so, a few years into that, I got pretty frustrated by the fact that I really enjoyed working with small business owners, but working with them in the way that I just described was rather difficult. Because they had the same challenges in many cases as very large organizations, but not the same budgets or time, attention, or resources. And so I think it was around 2002 or so, I decided really to solve my frustration that I would try to create a very systematic almost product-like approach where I would be able to walk into somebody and say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope we can get. And by the way, here's what it is going to cost. And as I said, I really did that to solve my greatest frustration. And it immediately became pretty apparent what I was doing was addressing the small business owner's greatest frustration too, because it's very difficult as a small business to buy marketing services. You've got the print shop, you've got the graphic designer, you've got the SEO person. All those people are coming to you saying, yeah, we can do this and that for you in a very tactical way. But nobody that's really looking at and helping business, or very few people that are looking at and helping businesses create an overall system for marketing that starts with strategy. And so that's really what I attempted to do with Duct Tape Marketing. It really resonated, took off, my practice flourished. And I was able to document it, turn it into a course that people could buy. I fortunately had people, I was doing a lot of writing in a way to promote my products and services, and that turned into several books now, as you mentioned, and attracted really a network of independent. I started actually just getting kind of out of the blue requests from other independent marketing folks saying, hey, I like what you're doing there. That makes total sense to me. How can I do it too? And I really, I'd love to say that this was, the grand plan, but I really kind of got pulled into that in a lot of ways because the thing I'm most passionate about is really helping small business owners get their life back. I just believe that owning a small business is really one of the greatest, most freeing things you can do, but it also will suck the life out of you if you aren't taking a very systematic approach and certainly aren't succeeding through marketing. And so what I was able to do or see that was a possibility with this network was that I would be able to replicate what I was doing, the mission I was on, and really maybe be able to bring this mission to thousands of businesses at a time, as opposed to 10 or 20 at a time.
Well, I think you're really wise in doing that. I mean, I think, one of the things I've seen a lot in marketing, and I'm a small business owner myself, entrepreneur, just like you. I haven't done it nearly as long, but I can totally resonate with that. Now, I mean, I'm hit up by marketers all the time. And one thing I've realized, and I love marketing, is that a lot of them seem to like cross pollute one another. In other words, the print shop now is going to do your social media online. And, everybody has sort of tried to put themselves into all these different avenues, almost trying to be an all-in-one solution. When I think it's challenging to do that, but what I like to your point about what you do is you come and say, this is what we're going to do. This is exactly how we're going to do it. This is what it's going to cost. And this is how it's going to benefit you.
Yeah, I think there's so much misunderstanding about what marketing actually is. I mean, if we had 10 small business owners, even 10 marketers here in a room together, and we polled them, we would get very different answers. And I think that's a real challenge in trying to buy this kind of invisible service when even the people that deliver the invisible service can't agree on what it is.
Well, I mean, so tell me, you're a big believer that the art of selling has changed dramatically. How so, and what can business owners do to better understand how to sell well?
Well, it's really interesting. We've been talking about marketing, but quite frankly, most small businesses really don't do that much marketing. Most of what they do is selling. When it really comes down to it, they're very sales driven. They may go out and network and meet somebody or get somebody referred to them, and they really immediately kind of go into selling mode, whether they call it that or realize that that's what it is or not. But what's really changed, obviously the net effect is that selling has really changed, but what's really changed is buying. The way that people want to find the companies they do business with and engage the companies they do business with and have a relationship with the customer or the businesses that they do business with is really the thing that's changed the most. I mean, I sit here in my office at my desk. I don't have a phone. I mean, it's very difficult to get a hold of me. I have a very set routine or process. When I want to find something, I go online and I do some research, and maybe I find solutions and I read reviews and I talk to my friends, and that's really how I maybe conclude to buy a product, period, or at least come to the conclusion that I'm going to start talking to a couple companies now because I've really done a lot of my initial work. And so what that really means as somebody who is selling a product, whether you're a business owner or a marketer or a salesperson for a company, You have to get involved in that journey that I just described at a much earlier point. And the way you do that is you put things out there that I can engage with, that I can interact with. So that's seeing you speaking, that's a white paper, that's a blog post that I found through search. And that's really, I think, what has changed probably the most about selling is that, I don't need you to show up and tell me the features and benefits. I need you to show up earlier than that and help me actually process all that overload of information that I have.
So really, it sounds to me, I mean, you're describing what I would consider, like content marketing, right? I mean, it was amazing to me when I first learned, I think it was from Seth Godin's blog or one of his books, but that was really the first time that it really clicked with me that, and this was a few years ago, that the marketing game has changed, right? Like it's no longer about you bombarding people with stuff they don't care about, because obviously we live in a noisy world, but there's also more ways than ever to block that stuff out.
That's right.
It's more about, like you're talking about, the early engagement where you're engaging people with content that they actually care about, that actually means something and has an impact on them. So they're coming to you. And not only are they coming to you, I mean, that's where you're developing the trust over time and then ultimately developing the sale over time. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the content marketing, because I really find, and it really blows my mind, John, that in the franchise community, they're still stuck the old way. Mm-hmm. They're still stuck on pay-per-clicks and direct mail pieces and a lot of that stuff, which, maybe still works to a certain extent. But when I talk to franchise owners and I talk to franchisors, I'm constantly saying, hey, what are you doing to engage a community? What are you doing to get your message out there? And a lot of times you'll get either silence on the other end or blank stares.
Yeah, I think in general, the world of marketing has accepted this idea of inbound marketing or content marketing that's really driving people to find you as opposed to you going out there and finding. But the reality is buying clicks and paying for an ad, I mean, that's easy, right? Producing content and doing some of the things that we know now are more effective takes work. I was visiting with what I would call a mid-sized construction company just this week, and they were talking about their marketing efforts, and we started, of course, as I do, down the path of of content, and just the exact same blank stare. It's kind of like, well, what do you, we have a website. What do you mean by content? Why would anybody read anything that we would put out? And I think so. As much as marketers like myself that deal with it every day have really come to the realization that that's a necessary component. There's probably still in the neighborhood, and particularly small businesses, probably 50 to 70% that are if they are doing content, they wake up on Monday and say, what should I write on my blog? There's no strategic approach to it. And the thing that I have been evangelizing for the last few years really is that once you produce that content, once you produce and own the asset of the content you've produced, but also that starts driving traffic to you, it actually makes all that. I'm not one of those people that says you shouldn't buy clicks, you shouldn't buy pay-per-click advertising. But what you should do is you should build a content foundation so you're using that pay-per-click advertising to drive people back to something that's useful first, so you can start a relationship and start capturing that email address rather than trying to sell to them. And I think that there's still very much a place for what we might call outbound marketing, but it is only effective today if you combine it with that idea of content marketing or inbound marketing.
Well, and I've seen a lot of, I don't know if you've seen this, where companies are now trying to do that to a certain extent. I mean, some will, they still do the direct marketing and they will still send out the direct mail pieces, but maybe now they have a personalized URL on there that now drives people back to a particular website that's going to provide them more information or try to engage them more. I mean, I've seen a lot of that with sweepstakes and promotions and and a lot of those things. I guess I'm curious because there's just so many ways to do marketing and to do selling. I mean, how does an organization combine the inbound selling and marketing to deliver a great experience for a
Well,
customer?
Yeah, well, I think, and I appreciate you asking that question, because a lot of people just assume, okay, we understand what inbound marketing is. Now let's just have the salespeople do it, and that's not really. First off, it doesn't make sense, but it's also not. Inbound marketing and inbound selling are not the same thing at all. They need to be an extension of each other and be fully integrated, but they're certainly not the same. And what I mean by that is that you might have. I'll give you two examples. You might have an organization that their marketing department is producing blog posts or white papers or something about an industry trend as a whole, and that company's kind of place in maybe participating in that trend. But the individual salesperson needs to maybe take those blog posts or take content out of that blog post or out of that white paper and start using it as a way to personalize information that they send to their 8, 10, 20 hottest prospects. Hey, I was thinking about you the other day. We, had this question come up. What last time we talked? Here's some great information about that, and just really take and filter that content, snip a little bit here, snip a little bit of there, and make it relevant all the way down to the individual customer. Provide insight because I think that's while we've all jumped on this idea of content, it's the pendulum sort of swung the other way. Now our prospects are drowning in it, and so one of the real services that I think salespeople need to provide is, okay, let me cut through all of that content for you and actually make it relevant to you, because the marketing department has, quite frankly, particularly in larger organizations, has a really difficult time doing that because they really are creating content, say, for an entire market or an entire industry or a segment, and that one of the greatest services I think a salesperson can do is say, okay, here, Mr. Smith, is why this matters to you in your particular situation. And I think that's a service of value. The same is true really in social media. The marketing department, on aggregate, maybe wants to run a contest to get Facebook likes, and their goal and objective is to have 5,000 Facebook fans or something. Well, the independent or individual salesperson should be using Facebook as well. Again, depending upon their industry, but let's say that's a good place for them. Should be using Facebook as well, but they shouldn't be interested in the aggregate number of fans they have. What they should be interested in is, how can I engage the 20 hottest prospects I have in a very one-to-one, very relational, very social way? So while they're both using this tool of social media, of Facebook, they use it in very different ways that are extensions of each other as opposed to copies of each other.
Yeah, I've never heard it broken down like that. That's really great, because it is true. I mean, you do see people that place overemphasis on Facebook likes or tweets or Twitter followers. It's like, what does that really? I was talking, in fact, Joel Abava and I were talking about that today. I said, it doesn't matter to me if I have 25,000 likes on Facebook, because I can get that by paying for it. Like, I can go and pay and get 25,000 likes. But if 24,999 of them aren't in my target area, who cares? Right? I mean, it just doesn't matter. And there's no engagement there. There's no ongoing engagement. I mean, to your point, I don't know about you, but I am bombarded with emails from people of lists that I'm on. And while I voluntarily sign up for the lists, the ones that I really pay attention to are the ones that when I see it in the headline or when I see it, it immediately speaks to something affecting me right then and there, because I just don't have the bandwidth we just don't have the bandwidth to take in all this stuff.
Yeah, and actually, I'm in the middle of kind of revamping some of our content strategies, because I think there was a period of time when people really loved it when you would uncover the 5 or 8 greatest stories that you found, and that's really been the format of my email, but newsletter as well. But I think certainly as hundreds of people have rushed to that approach, I think we have to constantly kind of reevaluate what our community, what our market, what our customers want, and try to find ways to stay valuable to them. It's very easy to get complacent and say, well, this is how we do it, and this is how we've been doing it for years. And I think the one thing that we should have picked up from the last 5 to 10 years is that if you're not changing, you're not growing.
Well, that's the one constant, right?
Right.
Everything is changing so rapidly. Well, so tell me, John. I mean, since this is the Franchise Euphoria podcast, we love turnkey systems and solutions, and you are all about that. You have created a turnkey marketing system that I really want to take a few minutes and have you explain. And you also have the Duct Tape Marketing consultants. There's sort of a licensing relationship, and kind of explain what that is and how that works.
Sure. So the system, I actually, and I think it's somebody you've had on your show before. I might be wrong, but I think so. I'm very influenced by Michael Gerber's work and read the E-Myth, like I'm sure many of your listeners and many franchises out there today, because he really was a proponent of that idea of even if you just have one unit business, you ought to think about it like a franchise. Because obviously the idea behind a franchise is that all the systems and processes are worked out so that you could take that and put it in another town, that it wasn't dependent upon the guy that opened and started the business, that it was replicable and that you could prove to somebody that it was replicable in many, many ways. And that even if you had that one unit business, that was the best way to actually grow a business so that it served your life. Well, like a lot of small business owners, that message really resonated with me, and it was probably, well, I won't say probably, it was the genesis really of me saying, hey, small business owners they get that idea of a system for what they make and fix and hiring people and getting stuff out the door and serving customers. But when it comes to marketing, that seems to be the one area where it's still sort of this strange voodoo that nobody understands, right? And so I said, well, what if I could add to the world the fact that I believe that marketing is not only a system, it's the most important system in your business, and why can't it be looked at that way, and why can't somebody create this turnkey idea? And so I won't ever say that I've cracked the perfect nut in that, but really the last 10 or 12 years of my life have been kind of dedicated to that idea of creating a tool that could be a framework for pretty much any business and this has been kind of the cool thing, of any size. I mean, I've applied this to startups all the way to 10, 20, $30 million businesses. And so the concepts really apply, and they apply across industries because they're every business has kind of a universal need, and that's to be seen as somebody that offers something worth paying for and to get customers and to keep them. And so it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, those are pretty universal. So I will tell you that interestingly enough, a great deal of my work has actually gone into simplifying what I've created, because that's the other part that I think is sort of interesting, is that a lot of people think marketing is really complicated and they don't understand it, and so there certainly are a lot of people out there that try to make it appear complicated and hard. And one of the things that I've really learned is that we're able to kind of boil it down to we actually have 7 steps that make up our whole system or our whole point of view. Obviously, there are levels of complexity dependent upon the type of business, but I would say that kind of my 2 contributions to the world, if you will, of small business are that marketing is a system, and it's not really that complicated.
Well, so there's really there's 2 components to it. There's the actual system that you've created, and then there's the consultants who go out and essentially sell the system or bring in their own clients, right? Yeah.
So there is the actual system, which is the tool, and we actually even talk about it differently. We talk about installing the duct tape marketing system in a business as opposed to necessarily the consulting idea. But then our consultants actually use a methodology for how to get that installed, how to get the information, how to work in a systematic way, how to install and build the system. Obviously has to be, it's not something that you show up at a job site and you bolt it on. It obviously does benefit from a very set path or methodology that starts with education and goes into discovery and research and presentation and then implementation. And so those stages of our methodology are how we create strategy with a business. It's how we help them define the customer journey. It's how we actually get them to understand how to use content marketing, how to build a total online presence. It's how we get lead generation, lead conversion working together, which is really just two parts of the same thing. And then really a kind of ongoing, how do you, it's, just creating a system isn't enough. How do you implement it? How do you operate it? How do you continue to tweak it and grow it? And so, that kind of combination of our point of view, the 7 steps, combined with our methodology, I think is really the closest thing to a turnkey system for marketing that exists today.
Well, I really like that, and I think there might be people who'd be interested in learning more about that. So we're going to have information on the show notes and everything on how to get a hold of you. And before we end, I'll have you talk about that as well. And I was fortunate enough to have Michael Gerber on my show. He changed my life after reading that book. And I was talking to another entrepreneur, and he said, if you had a room full of successful executives and you said, what's the one book that influenced you more than anything else? He's fully convinced that most of the people would raise their hand for the E-Myth revisited. So, well, I know you're busy. With the last couple minutes that we have here, John, I really want to talk about your new upcoming book, Duct Tape Selling. I love the concept. I've had an opportunity to read the first chapter because the book's not out yet, but I love the concept, love the idea behind the book, and that is to think like a marketer and sell like a superstar. Tell us about the book and why you decided to write it and how it's going to impact somebody.
Yeah, so I decided to write this book really because really for the individual or independent salesperson that I kind of saw in some cases struggling or even dying out there because the buyer no longer wanted their outreach or their cold calling or all the things that companies are still telling them to do. And so I initially started to write this book for that person. And the feedback that I've received has really been interesting because it is definitely for that if you're a salesperson, it's definitely written for you. But the feedback I'm getting is from business owners who are saying, you know what, this is really just we sell. I mean, we don't even call ourselves a salesperson, but we market and sell our products and wares, and this is just a much more personalized approach to marketing and selling together. And so ironically, very large organizations the message is resonating because they realize the sort of the disaster that they have of this divided sales and marketing culture. And they are kind of touting this book as the book to teach them how to get sales and marketing on the same page. So I'd like to say I was just incredibly brilliant and I've written a book that can actually appeal to all these markets, but that wasn't necessarily my intent, but apparently that's what I've done.
So when is it coming out and how can people get a hold of you about the book and the marketing system or anything else if they just want to reach you?
Yeah, well, so the book will be in stores and online, and there's a digital version as well as an audio version, and that'll be May 15th of 2014. So depending upon when you're listening to this, it may either be out already or you can pre-order, of course. And we have a site for the book itself, ducttapeselling.com, and you can find some ways to get a couple pre-order bonuses there. If you like, as well as just resources, tons of resources. In fact, I list probably over 200 resources or organizations or individual people in the book as examples. And I have a chapter by chapter list of all the links to those resources. I don't know if you've ever read a book and you think, oh, I'm going to have to go check that website out. Well, now if you're reading this book, you can pull up the website and everything I reference, you can be all ADD and click around all you want.
See, I love that because I'm always the one who's either, I'm reading a lot of books on my computer and I'm highlighting and making notes and all that stuff to go back to.
Right. Yep.
Well, listen, John, I so appreciate your time. I would love at some point in the future to have you back on the show to talk about some specifics with social media and storytelling. And, I feel like you and I could have many conversations about this, and it's so applicable to the franchise community, everything you're doing. But I know you got to run and I got to run. And really, it's just been great having you on the show.
Well, I appreciate it. And I will tell you that more than one franchise has reached out to me and said, we have this great tool or this great product and this great system, but we're lacking the marketing piece that's really very systemized. And so I think that there's probably a great need out there, even for very established franchise opportunities, to really kind of take a little different view of their marketing system.
Well, it's a huge component because what it is I work with startup franchisors as well. So turning a business into a franchise.
Yes.
And one of the hardest things, and they don't, everybody I've worked with, they don't know what to do on this front, is okay, now I've turned it into a franchise. How do I go get the right franchisee? And, how do I go out and do it without the owner being out there doing it himself? And then, there's organizations out there that will offer services, but trust me, they are way overpriced and a lot of them under-deliver. And they really need some sort of system to go in. I'm seeing it everywhere in the franchise space. So, well, good stuff, John. I look forward to staying in touch with you, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.